Valentine's Day was supposed to be special this year. I had been with my girlfriend, Amy, for nearly 3 years, and we decided to do something different, something fancy. Instead of the usual dinner and movie date, I booked us a room at an old, historic hotel about an hour outside the city. The place had a reputation, not for being haunted, exactly, but for being old-fashioned, eerie in a way that made people uncomfortable. Some even claimed the place felt like a time capsule, like you were stepping into another era as soon as you walked through the doors. I didn't care about any of that. I just wanted a romantic night away with Amy. The lobby was grand. High ceilings, antique chandeliers, the kind of place that smelled like old wood and faded perfume. The receptionist, an older woman with tired eyes, gave us an odd smile as she handed over our key. Room 306, end of the hall. Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. The elevator was out of service, so we took the stairs. By the time we reached our floor, the air felt heavy. The hallway was lined with deep red carpeting, and the old-fashioned wallpaper curled slightly at the edges. Our room was at the very end. The door was strangely cold to the touch. When we stepped inside, something felt off. The room was beautiful, a vintage 4-poster bed, an ornate mirror above the dresser, heavy curtains that blocked out the city lights. But the moment we walked in, I felt an overwhelming sense that we were intruding. Amy laughed, kicking off her shoes. Creepy old hotels always have a vibe, huh? I forced a smile, trying to shake the feeling. It was just a room, just an old hotel with too much history in its walls. We had dinner downstairs, shared a bottle of wine, and by the time we made it back to the room, the eerie feeling had mostly faded. But then, the knocking started. Soft, deliberate, coming from inside the closet. Amy and I both froze. For a moment, I thought I had imagined it. Maybe it was an old pipe shifting in the walls. But then it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. Amy grabbed my arm. Did you hear that? I swallowed hard. Yeah. I walked toward the closet, trying to act braver than I felt. The door was slightly ajar. I could see the sliver of darkness inside. I reached out, pulled it open. Nothing. Just a few wooden hangers swinging slightly, as if someone had just brushed past them. Amy exhaled a nervous laugh. Old hotel noises. It's fine. But as we got ready for bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. At some point during the night, I woke up freezing. The room was dark, but I could see the closet door was open again. I knew. I had closed it. I sat up, my breath visible in the cold air. The room was silent. Too silent. That's when I noticed the mirror. The tall, antique mirror above the dresser. There was something in it. Not a reflection. Not a shadow. A figure. Standing at the foot of our bed. Tall. Unmoving. Watching. It was a woman. But her face was wrong. Her eyes were just black voids. Her mouth was open too wide, like she had been frozen mid-scream. I turned my head to look at the foot of the bed. Nothing was there, but when I looked back at the mirror, she was closer. My body locked up with fear. I reached for Amy, shaking her awake. She groggily sat up. What's wrong? I pointed at the mirror. The woman was gone. Amy stared at the empty glass, confused. What is it? I couldn't explain it. I just grabbed my keys. We're leaving. Amy didn't argue. She could tell I was scared in a way I had never been before. We packed our bags in record time and bolted from the room. As we rushed past the front desk, the old woman at reception didn't look surprised. She just gave a small, knowing nod and said, "You saw her, didn't you?" I didn't answer. We didn't even check out. We drove home in silence, and when we finally got back to Amy's apartment, we sat in the car, hands still shaking. "I looked up the hotel," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I glanced at her. She turned her phone screen toward me. The search results showed an old newspaper article about a woman who had died in room 306. Valentine's Day, 1929. She had been waiting for her lover to arrive, but he never did. They found her body 2 days later, face frozen in a scream. We never spoke about it again, but sometimes, when I pass by a mirror in a dark room, I swear I see her reflection, watching, waiting. I wasn't supposed to have a Valentine's date that year. My last relationship had ended a few months prior, and I wasn't looking for anything serious. But about a week before Valentine's Day, I matched with a girl named Lena on a dating app. She was gorgeous. Long dark hair, deep green eyes, the kind of smile that made you forget whatever you were doing. She was funny, too. Our conversation flowed naturally, like we had known each other for years. When she suggested we grab dinner on Valentine's night, I figured, why not? It was just dinner. But there was something strange about her profile. She had only one picture. No Instagram, no linked social media, nothing that would help verify who she was. But I didn't question it too much. Some people are just private. I should have questioned it. We agreed to meet at a small, quiet restaurant downtown. I got there first, grabbed a table near the window, and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I started to think she had ghosted me. Then, at exactly 8 p.m., she walked in. She was even more beautiful in person, but there was something off. Her movements were too smooth, like she was gliding instead of walking. Her face was perfectly symmetrical, almost too perfect. She sat down, smiling. "I'm so glad you came." Her voice was soft, almost robotic. I laughed nervously, trying to shake off the weird feeling creeping up my spine. "Yeah, of course. You look great." She tilted her head slightly. "So do you." The way she said it, too rehearsed, too precise, made my stomach tighten. The waiter came, took our orders. That's when I noticed. She wasn't blinking. Not once. I tried not to stare, but it was unsettling. She asked me questions. A lot of them. Not just normal first date questions either. Deep, personal ones. "What's your biggest regret? If you could erase one person from your life, who would it be? Do you ever feel like someone is watching you?" I laughed awkwardly, trying to turn the questions back on her. But every time I did, she ignored them. It was like she had no past, no stories, no experiences, just questions. At some point, my unease turned to genuine fear. I glanced around the restaurant, wondering if I should just leave. That's when I noticed something that made my blood turn to ice. In the reflection of the restaurant's window, she wasn't there. I was staring directly at my own reflection, sitting alone. "No, Lena." I turned back to her, my heart hammering in my chest. She was still smiling. "You're not real," I whispered before I could stop myself. Her head tilted again. "Does it matter?" I stood up so fast my chair nearly tipped over. The entire restaurant fell silent as everyone turned to stare. Except for her. She just sat there, still smiling, like she knew I wouldn't leave. I grabbed my coat, muttered something about needing air, and bolted for the exit. The second I stepped outside, my breath came in gasps. I turned back toward the restaurant, expecting to see her through the window. But the table was empty. My plate was still there. My drink, my chair, slightly pulled back. But no sign of her. I checked my phone, my fingers trembling. I opened the dating app. Her profile was gone. Not just unmatched, completely erased, like she had never existed. I barely slept that night. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was just tired. But the next morning, I got a notification on my phone. One new message. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Just 3 words. "See you soon." I deleted the message, blocked the number, even reset my phone. But every Valentine's Day since, at exactly 8 p.m., I get the same message. From a different number. "See you soon." I had been dating Jenna for about 5 months when our first Valentine's Day together came around. It was the first time in years that I actually had someone to celebrate with, and I wanted to make it special. I had a dinner planned, flowers, and even a small handwritten letter to make it more personal. But what I didn't know at the time was that someone else had plans for Jenna too. A few days before Valentine's, she started getting strange messages. At first, they seemed innocent enough. An anonymous admirer telling her she was beautiful, that she deserved the world. It was a little weird, but nothing threatening. Jenna laughed it off, saying it was probably some old classmate trying to get under my skin. But then the messages got personal. They mentioned what she had worn that day, the exact places she had been, the specific conversations she had had with her friends. Whoever it was, they had been watching her. I told her to block the number. She did, but it didn't stop. The next day, she found a gift box on her doorstep. Inside was a single red rose and a note. I see the way he looks at you. He doesn't deserve you. But don't worry, I'll make sure he won't be a problem anymore. Happy Valentine's Day, my love. My stomach dropped when I read it. It wasn't just a stalker. This person knew about me. Jenna was terrified. She wanted to call the police, but what would they do? A few texts and a weird note weren't enough to track someone down. So instead, I told her I would drive her to and from work and that she wouldn't be alone for the next few days. That night, she stayed over at my place. We double-checked the locks, closed the blinds, and tried to pretend everything was normal. But at 2:47 a.m., we woke up to a loud bang outside my apartment. I grabbed a baseball bat and crept toward the front door. The peephole was covered. Someone was standing on the other side. A low, deliberate knock. I held my breath, gripping the bat so tight my hands ached. Jenna whispered my name behind me, shaking with fear. Then, a second knock. Slow, heavy. I reached for my phone to call the police. But before I could dial, a shadow moved past the window. Whoever it was, they were walking around the apartment. I turned off the lights. Jenna and I stayed completely still, listening. Then, suddenly, silence. No footsteps, no knocking, nothing. I waited, heart hammering in my chest. 5 minutes passed, then 10. When I finally worked up the courage to check the door, I found something taped to it. A photo of Jenna, taken that night through my apartment window. Her face was slightly blurred, as if she had been mid-movement, but it was undeniably her. There was a note scribbled on the back. You locked the doors, but I was still with you. I'll always be with you. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, Jenna packed a bag and went to stay with her parents for a while. I filed a police report, but nothing ever came of it. The messages stopped. The person, whoever they were, disappeared. But every Valentine's Day since, Jenna still checks the windows before going to bed. And so do I.